Good morning or afternoon, everybody. Coming after you after episode 5. So, first things first, once again, I really enjoyed this episode. I was expecting a huge drop in action since the first 4 episodes felt like a roller coaster, and episode 4 ended on such a high note. But I was pleasantly surprised when things started heating up with the White Tower. We had some political moves being made, we had some cat and mouse games. Elida was being Elida. Bodies were getting dropped in the two rivers. There was the friction between the White Cloaks and Perrin that finally came to a boil. They somehow made a boat ride in the middle of the ocean interesting to watch. And Egwene had herself a night in the world of dreams. I'm going to try and cover it all as quickly as possible, but it's still probably going to be a while. So turn up the volume, grab some dishes to wash, laundry to fold, or bring me on your commute to work. Let's dive into episode 5 of season 3 of The Wheel of Time. I'm going to kind of do a section for each kind of little plot line that went on. So if you want to follow along, I'll put chapter links in the bottom, hopefully if I remember. But I'm going to start with Moiraine Lan kind of lumped together. So the episode starts off with this sequence of Moiraine trying to use the Sakarnan, or as I'm going to refer to it, the Choden Ball. Now, I have a spoiler prediction on this that I'll include in the end of the video, but it really seems like Moiraine wants to be able to channel with this device safely, but she just can't quite get it under control. The choreography has her almost wrestling with it as what appears to be hundreds, maybe even thousands of different weaves project out as she channels with this. Now, I want to put a pin in the second feeling she discussed with Lan. We all know female channeling is parallel to getting your rocks off, so that explains why her having her power amplified by 1,000, she says it feels euphoric, but it's the hunger or thirst line that drew my attention second. I'm wondering if this is going to have a deeper implication further down the line, more in line with the Choden Call, which book readers may remember has an adverse effect on a certain male channeler. I think it'd be interesting if the Sakarnan and both Kalendor had those traits applied to them that were previously aligned with the access keys. I've got to hand it to Daniel Henney. He's done a great job portraying this concern for Moiraine as her emotions on this journey, like as she goes towards accepting her fate. Just the way he's portrayed, like through the water bond, his concern and all that, it's done really well. The scene where Lan and Moiraine are sitting by the fire and she basically tells Lan that their life's work, the last 20 years, she's not even going to be alive to see it through. My heart was breaking for her. This is a side of Moiraine we didn't get to see often, if ever, in the books, and I have to have her and Lan sharing this moment. It felt special and had me tearing up a little bit. The way Lan asks her to share a drink with an old friend and he brings out the usquai. The waterworks were ready to roll. They were really priming the pump on this episode. They eventually did get me with some other stuff, but damn. And then the goodbye with Moiraine and Swan sharing with each other, knowing the extent of everything they went through to get there. 20 years they've dedicated their lives to searching for Rand and preparing to have the tower in control when the Dragon Reborn finally reveals himself. For it to finally be there, and they each have lost so much control over the situations, it pulls on the heartstrings a little bit. You got to feel for them. And then when they start talking about waiting for each other in the next life, that was a touch. And then they have like the music from when Swan had her like heading off to Tar Valon in her boat from season 1. They brought that sound bit back. Oh my god. And now for Swan to have to turn the tides in the tower for them to accept helping Rand as the Dragon Reborn, rather than caging him, it's going to be an uphill battle, especially with what just happened with Elida in this episode. I also think they're doing a good job easing Aviendha into her role as an Aiel teacher to Rand. Her conversations with the Wise One and the actress's portrayal of Aviendha's kind of defiance and then eventual acceptance of her roles is done really well. I thought Cold Rock's Hold looked okay. It didn't fit quite what was in my head perfectly, but that's not very consequential to the story as a whole. The interior shots were pretty good, like the environments where they're doing the dream walking, and I think that's far more important than the exterior. They introduce us to the idea of the Aiel thruple, perhaps a window into the future that a man can love a woman who also loves another woman. I gotta say, the little girl that they introduce Rand to, and he plays with her in the street, if that little girl plays the role of a different little girl that we see in the Stone of Tyr, it's gonna be something. So if we get that going forward, I don't know. That's gonna have some, not repercussions, but, well, the repercussions for me, not the show. We'll see. Jumping over to the world of dreams, I really enjoyed their interpretation of Tel'aran'rhiod. I'm just going to call it the dream world. The audio and visual effects were pretty on par for what I had in my head. Maybe just a little more of that J.J. Abrams blue filter. The way the show, they showed the outfit changes of it, like, kind of disappearing and coming instantly as her mind began to wander. I thought that was pretty good. A great way to explain to the audience kind of how things can work in the world of dreams. I really hope they dive into, like, as time goes on and things get wacky, like all the wacky shit that can happen. I thought it was really well done. Overall, I think they're doing a great job this season introducing yet another magic system and it feeling natural and not convoluted. I was nervous they would kind of fumble the bag with the dream world a little bit, but so far it's hitting its stride, and I can't wait to see them take it up a notch as the powers of this world are shown to the viewer. Even the candle set for them telling time was there with, like, the pin, and it'll drop in an hour or something like that. And then the way Lanfear rolls up on Egwene was straight out of a horror movie. We got the ghosts of people that wandered into the dream kind of going around. She's in Tarvalon. The cart falls over and it's like a little spooky. And then it just pans over to Lanfear watching Egwene. And I had goosebumps as this is going on. But alas, Egwene finally knows who's been stalking her in her dreams, and it's one of the 8 magical Hitlers that exists in this world. So that's something. You got to feel for Egwene on that one. Not a crazy amount of Rand in this episode. I feel like it mostly served as a way to show some of the other characters coming to terms with his path and setting up the world around him, which I'm not sure how I feel about as the series progresses. On one hand, he is one of my favorite characters and a crucial part of this series. On the other hand, due to the shortened window for the show to make use and care about other people, I can understand the need to build up the world around them. After all, as stated in A Memory of Light, it's about all of them. Wheel of Time gets a lot of its charm from how fleshed out the characters are, so their POVs and reactions feel real to people. They spend a lot of time this episode building the people that will be around and interacting with Rand in the story to come, while slowly advancing him to where he needs to be. So, on one hand, I understand, really hope there is a plan here with what we're doing. Now, the stuff with him and Lanfear, at least once he learned she was Lanfear, I'm not sure about. I know we made the Two Rivers people much less conservative in their ideas of, like, marriage and relationships, but I still feel like a core part of Rand would be cutting ties with Lanfear once she was revealed and he realized she wasn't Selene anymore. I'm also curious on his understanding of the dream at this point. Does he know that is the real Lanfear, or is he simply kind of having, a boyhood dream? Is Rand willingly cheating on Egwene? Because that would definitely be a no-go as far as his character to me. I'm going to wait and see how this one is explained before I get the pitchfork out, though. I'm really hoping it's some type of Lanfear manipulation going on, but don't 100% know. I'll talk about the entire Swan and Elida beef in this next section before I head back to, like, the dreams and Tanchico. First off, I loved this part of the episode. I've been praising their interpretation of the politics in the White Tower since season 1, and they have yet to let me down. The way Elida tries to rile up Swan with these kind of elitist remarks and insults, and how she just goes about trying to poke and prod every hole she wants to find in Swan's armor, and then add the fact that her actress is doing a killer job of it. Dare I say they might make me like Elida. The note that Swan was looking at, was that one that she got from Moiraine, and she was, like, smelling it just, like, to remember her, and then she puts it in her, like, lockbox, which special lockbox. That was neat to see. Nobody can get inside of it. Yada, yada, yada. Anyways, we get the background info that Elaida and Swan went against each other for who would become the Amyrlin seat previously. Obviously, Swan won, but Elaida definitely has not let that go. In fact, true to the books, she happens to remember that Swan and Moiraine were more than friends when they were younger, because she doesn't forget. Swan, Leanne, Perrin, and the help of a lobotomized Adeleus hatch this plan to see if Elaida may be the remaining dark friend into the tower. After all, we talked about like the hearts, which I thought was clever, how they go interact with each other. And so they're trying to figure out if she is in fact the dark friend, because that would make dealing with her much easier. Meanwhile, Elaida is working just as hard to gather strength in the tower to cast a vote to cage the Dragon Reborn. But I have a strange feeling she has another vote in mind as well, and I'm wondering if we'll get a last-second bait and switch. Cut to my favorite scene in this episode, I think. Elaida meets Joya and Amiko in the 13th Depository, and let me tell you what, we do not negotiate with terrorists. God damn, this was brutal, and I loved it. Elaida means business, and she's going to get that information that she wants. The way she casually dispatches Amiko to instill fear in Joya to get her to talk, and then she essentially starts torturing her. And the part that's really messed up is, at least in my understanding, is the Aes Sedai are bound by their oaths. But if they truly believe something, they can almost sidestep the barriers for harming others. So Elaida maybe truly believes in her mission or whatever. She's got to have some strong beliefs to be able to do this, I think, to overstep her oaths. Correct me if I'm wrong, but damn. Also, according to the casting, the Gray Man was the same Gray Man that Moghedien made in episode 1. Joachim Carradine or whatever. But anyways, I'm really curious what the repercussions of this trap are going to be on Swan and how Elaida will use it to her advantage going forward. Can't wait for more of this plotline. As some predicted, Alanna is in the Two Rivers looking to recruit and build an army. Considering all of the powerful beings that came out of there in the last 2 years, it's a reasonable thought. She discusses the blood of Manetheren and the potential those people have. Some have speculated that a certain character that she has an important interaction with later may be swapped for someone from the Two Rivers. Perhaps they'll take this approach, having her do that and then using that person to kind of build an army. Well, I think that could work. It would certainly open up a boat of new character interactions. Curious how Aiel would feel about that, and the others, how Perrin would feel about that, how everyone in the Two Rivers would feel about that. So I don't know. Now, this is my first major gripe of this season. Why are we doing this cat and mouse with Alanna and Maksim, only for him to end up right back with her at the end of the episode? All that screen time of them arguing and whatnot feels wasted at this point. I could understand if he truly did go off and there was going to be some plot forwarding that happened because of that. But they didn't need to separate them for Alanna to be attacked. I hate to say it, but it really feels like it was just an opportunity for the actor to bolster his resume a little bit. For this to ultimately have been for nothing feels like a waste of screen time in a show with this tight of a schedule. I feel like there's a lot of that stuff that kind of derailed season 2 in some episodes and kind of dragged it down. So I really hope that we're done with that. We made it to episode 5 before something like that really jumped out at me, so I'll take it. Additionally, how the hell are they going to be healed? Is the Cawthon girl going to heal 15 arrow wounds in 2 people and the knife wound in Perrin? I don't know. But as a side note, her being able to channel does give some credence to Alanna's plan. So we'll see where we go from there. Now let's talk about the White Cloaks. I think I might have a guy crush on Dain Bornhald in this show. He doesn't do a whole lot, but I enjoy every second his character is on screen. The way the actor shows Dain's emotions and his struggle with upholding the light, wanting revenge, and trying to keep Valda's influence at bay is a treat to watch. As time goes on, his morals are tested, and finally in this episode, we see them break. It seems like the show's version of the White Cloaks are a little less adverse towards the Aes Sedai, so for him to have such a reaction towards Natty shows that this is not the same Dain that we first met, or he's certainly not his father. One of the interesting parts from the books was the contrast between the two White Cloak camps that were in the Two Rivers at the time. Dain's was a professional and more well-kept looking one, and a certain bad guy's was raggedy, dirty, and their tents were in poor condition, and their attitudes matched it. It seems like in the show, Dain's camp is already slightly walking this path. It's not a change I'm upset with, just one I hope, if a certain bad guy is introduced, they still explore. I think the idea of the camp slowly descending into the uncleanliness, in parallel with Dain's mental state descending, would also be a worthy approach. I definitely prefer one over the other, but I think they both kind of have their intrigue. We'll see what happens going forward. They said a certain individual they said reinforcements were on their way. I wonder if a certain individual will be with them. We'll find out. And that leads us into Perrin. Not much to say about Perrin other than Aiel is a badass, and I hope the Coffin Girl can heal him. And I wonder if they'll have him heal Dain or not, or if they'll just leave him. He got stabbed pretty good. I'd be doing the show a disservice, not to mention how much I hate Valda for what he did to Natty, and the conflict between Perrin and Dain is only going to get deeper because of it. The way Dain shouts like, I was, when Perrin's thought he was a good man. Love what they're doing there. It's going to be really interesting how these two groups interact going forward as the battle for the Two Rivers draws near. Definitely a lot going on there, and I can't wait to see kind of what the show does with it. As for the Tanchico Crew, I'll be brief with this piece. The gang discovers that the Sea Folk women can channel. Not only can they channel, they're pretty good at it too. And it turns out they manipulate the wind to move their ships at great speed. Hence Elaine's surprise that they've made it as far as they have in such a short time. The effects on the wind channeling weaves looked great, like the weaves they were doing. I do wish it seemed like it actually interacted with the ship's sail a little bit more. And like the ship seems kind of rigid for how much wind they might be creating. One thing that does get me though is why wouldn't they have felt them channeling that powerfully if they were on the same ship? Am I misremembering, or can female channelers feel when others are embracing the source and using it? Has that been axed in the show, or am I misremembering that from the books? Also, I just want to take a pause and say that Elaine and Matt are done extremely well. Anytime they're on the screen, it just feels right. I could watch 3 seasons of them just going back and forth with different people. If either of their mouths are moving, I'm enjoying what's on the screen. I'd also like to commend Matt for his logic when it comes to Min's drawing of her vision. He sees himself hanging, but cleverly points out that he was supposed to kill Rand. So that might not necessarily mean that he's going to hang. Whether he believes that logic is a different story. We even explore the psychology behind Nynaeve's block, and I'm wondering how it will affect the story going forward. Basically, it boils down to her being too stubborn to surrender to the source, and they use her lack of sea legs and willing to bend her knees as a metaphor to explain it, which honestly I thought was a great idea from a narrative perspective, so props to the writing team for that. The city of Tanchico itself looked great, the costumes and the background people, the city stretching far back from the coast, looked right about kind of what I had in mind, so I can't wait to see more of it going forward. And on to the final dream scenes. The way they ended this episode hit me like a freight train. Egwene trying to reach her friends and then kind of eavesdropping on them as she smiles, seeing them in their happiest moments. If I do recall, she was a dream creeper in the books. In fact, I think I remember Rand almost catching her in one of them. But anyway, back to the point. The way they use this scene to give us a look into each of our characters' heads, into their most cherished thoughts, I thought was well done. It's a clever way to show the growth and motivations that otherwise would never be spoken by these characters. Nynaeve, she's got her family that she lost in the accepted test. Elaine is sailing the seas with Aviendha, escaping the weight of her royal duty. She's got her lover with her. She's on the ocean. She doesn't have to deal with the Andorran court or her journey with the Aes Sedai. That got me a little bit. Matt Cawthon, He's not with women in a tavern, dicing, gambling. He's with his mother and his sisters, safe in the tower or wherever they are. This one finally made the water turn on, especially knowing what happened to his mother. Hearing his mother tell him she's proud of him after how we left her off, calling him a prick, blah, 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 or being an alcoholic, yada, yada, yada. Knowing he's never going to hear those words from her, that got me going. That got me. Seeing Perrin and Fael at the blacksmith forge, Hopper's with them, finally moving on from Layla, which that whole plot piece aside, still we're moving forward narratively, like him moving on, having a crush on Fael, maybe she's in his happiest moment. I think it would have been a nice touch if Perrin would have noticed Egwene watching him, or Hopper. But anyways, on to the ultimate finale of this. She goes to see Rand, who sees in their childhood place where they used to go in the mountains, I think. This is the boy that she told she would stand by his side as he walks the path of being the Dragon Reborn. The smile on her face when she sees him, only to have Lanfear's hand like slither out of nowhere around his head. And then suddenly she's on top of Rand, who Egwene, she now knows Lanfear's the one that's been stalking her. It was kind of like a horror show. And then Lanfear, being the ultimate skag she is, starts to rub it in even further by undressing Rand. And she's touching his chest. Now he takes off her dress. Now let me go. I just can't look. It's killing me. That's all I can think about watching this on the rerun is that song. Anyways, but alas, that brings us to the end of the episode. Poor Egwene. I front-loaded this video with how I was feeling kind of about where the show is at, so I guess I'll just leave it at that. We're probably running pretty long by now. I am going to jump into a couple spoilers, predictions. Let's just play it safe and say that if you have not finished the books, this is probably your jumping off point. So, I will bid you all adieu. Thank you for watching. I am loving the show right now, and I will see you in the next one. So, I'm going to give you guys like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, spoilers. I'm going to talk about Aviendha and Rand really quick. The way Aviendha is looking at Rand, the way they're interacting, the way they discuss the Wetlanders having more than one bride. I think Aviendha saw herself with Rand in those rings, and knowing she also loves Elaine, they're warming us up to the idea of them being together. I'm curious if Elaine will ever feel the same way for Rand, though, and how this will all play together, how a certain third character will play into it. They make her cold to Rand in the beginning, initially reluctant to the idea, but when she's ordered to teach him, you can see the frustration and fear in her face, and then she's softening up to him later in the episode. I think she's coming around to it. I have a strong belief, based on the last episode and reinforced by this one, that Moiraine will die in episode 8. I think it involves the Sarkarnan, and possibly the fact that she cannot handle using its power. Her using it and the emotions she felt in this episode were her coming to terms with her fate. My guess is that in order to save Rand or Egwene in the final episode, she's going to have to kill Lanfear with the help of the orb, or maybe even using balefire. And she's going to burn herself out doing it. But that's just kind of a rough guess. I also think that the armor she had in one of the previews is going to play into it. Like maybe when she's getting slashed by Lanfear in a bunch of the videos, like Lanfear is going to try and stab her and that's going to save her. We'll see. I also love the way they're setting up the Golden Crane plot line with the Malkiri woman and Lan reminiscing about the Lost Kingdom. I know it's going to be a few years, but the payoff is going to be awesome on that. Additionally, talking about the ball, one of the issues with the Choden Call access key was the effect it had on Rand mentally. When Moiraine mentions a second feeling channeling with Sarkarnan, I almost wonder if they're going to give these traits to Kalendor and the Sarkarnan, but we'll definitely have to wait and see. And lastly, it seems like Egwene was able to jump around and find everyone's dreams pretty easily. I'm wondering if Rand is going to learn how to shield his dreams after this, or if that's a concept that will even be explained. If I recall correctly, it was like everyone's dreams were stars in the sky, but Rand's that was shielded had kind of like a reddish tint to it to show that you couldn't get into it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's where I'm at on there. Anyways, those are just kind of a few quick predictions and thoughts I had. I already said goodbye to everyone. So, with that being said, goodbye again. I'll see you after episode 6. Later, Tater.